power structure. And again, it's not going to be a communist takeover. Let's get that straight. The communists are going to be the detonators for civil unrest. That's why communists always want to get rid of the death penalty. As General Parton taught me, part of the communist takeover program is they want to be able to get their people out once they've taken over. And they want to be able to not have charges on them when they kill cops and stuff. That's why the police have got to prosecute bad cops. They've got to not be federalized and realize the attack plan. And then we have to stand with good departments when they're under federal attack, because it's not federal, it's globalist. Let's go ahead and talk to Tom in Canada on George Soros. Tom, you're on the air. Welcome.
I actually want to talk about the Chinese government. I mean, any government that's just forcing abortions on the woman is, you know, a little messed up. So if U.S. ends up going to war with China one day, I mean, it's possible, man, and that'd be crazy. But you know, look at your military budget, $650 billion a year, something like that. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But also, I want to talk to you about climate change. I think you're a smart guy, but you got a blind spot with climate change. Sea levels are probably going to start rising pretty dramatically in about 15, 20 years. And I know you got some good points about climate change and stuff, and you know information about it, but I still just don't really think you know what's totally going on with that. And it's pretty
sure. Well, let me say this. When the Earth was warming until about a decade ago, the ice caps of Mars were melting too, and then now they're growing again. And Al Gore said the Arctic would be gone by 2013. It's bigger than ever recorded by the satellites over it. And that's admitted. But if the sea levels were going up, the answer isn't paying Al Gore carbon taxes or Obama or George Soros, who own the big carbon trading facilities in London and Chicago. So that's my issue there. I mean, they're in the news saying flooding in Texas is because of global warming. We always go through cycles of flash flooding in central Texas. When I was in high school here, it basically rained for a year straight almost. And then it went into, I mean, it's just a cycle to secure resources for multinationals. And then we end up holding the bill. Sometimes the war is legitimate, sometimes it's not. But in almost every case, the economic gains we don't even see. I mean, if you're going to have an empire, at least have some of the spoils come back to the old system, the homeland. And I'm not endorsing an imperial system like the British Empire, but at least a lot of its spoils did come back to England, back to what became the United Kingdom. Nowadays, we paid to take over Iraq and break it up, and the Chinese government and the French government and others got the oil. The French, who weren't even part of it, and the Chinese. You see the sick joke? We can't even have that Canadian oil. It's being trained by Warren Buffett out to the coast of Canada, the West Coast, to be sent to China. Everything's being strategically done to shut us down. And the Pentagon's main enemy is its own veterans. That should be a big wake-up call. And I keep harping on that to point out we've been taken over. If a foreign power took over your government, who would their number one enemy be? Let me think. The veterans. Oh, yes, because the government that's taken over, the globalist system, is going to do horrible things, ladies and gentlemen, like taking the pension funds and arresting political prisoners. And they know it's going to get so bad, veterans are going to get sick of it and will fight. They'll have local police brainwashed and ready and federalized to then go after the local vets. That will exhaust and break down local government. And then later, just like Iraq was weakened and ISIS came in, the UN will come in with a multinational force under global receivership, will be blamed for the global derivatives, will be blamed for everything. We're being set up for that. And then we will be occupied and broken in a bunch of pieces as economic redevelopment zones under a North American Union. But it'll all be sold not as an invasion, but as helpers. Communist China is going to build the new rail lines and administer them and own them and run them and tax you. And the California governor is saying, thank you Chinese leaders. That's how sick this is. We're going to go back to your phone calls with Mad Max, Corey, Chris, Richie, and others. Massive acceleration towards war with China and Russia. A lot of this stuff's been saber-rattling in the past for the military-industrial complex, but now they're making really provocative moves in Ukraine. The Chinese are making super provocative moves towards the West. What do you make of this?
Hey, Alex, first of all, I'm a pastor here in Southern Illinois, and I just want to thank you for your spiritual discernment on all of this that's happening. I think you know more than anybody else that there's a spiritual force behind this more than just what meets the eye. So,
yes, it is an evil force that wants us to kill each other.
Right, absolutely. And I just want to say, too, that I realize that there's a lot of my brothers and sisters that are evangelicals that are becoming decadent just like everybody else, but there still are some of us that are preaching the truth and see what's going on.
Oh, so answer my question. Why do you think evangelicals out of all the Christian groups are being lumped in as terrorists?
I think because there are some of us that know. I mean, you know your history probably better than most people, probably 90% of the people in the United States, and one of the people groups that the British feared the most were the preachers. In fact, they called them the Black Robe Regiment because they could inspire people and stir the people up to realize that there was more than just filling your belly and being entertained. There's more to life than that. And I think that's why they're lumped in with some of that group. And that's why they're being co-opted like every other group.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I like evangelicals. I was brought up, part of the time going to evangelical churches, that and Baptist churches and others, but it's just at the same time, I see so many evangelicals kind of are mainline now, establishment, name it and claim it. They've been kind of compromised. But I think it is the spirit of real evangelicals that threatens the system. Because the system is so devilish, they hate that Holy Spirit.
Absolutely. You're 100% right there. And I just want you to know we're praying for you. We're putting news articles in front of our congregation. We're praying about stuff that's going on in the world. We're trying to wake people up to realize that what the Bible said, a lot of this stuff is falling right in line with it.
Oh, I mean, if this doesn't look, if this doesn't make people realize it's a spiritual war, look at everything being manifest, just as the Bible said it would. It is just so crazy. God bless you. Good to hear from you. Mad Max in North Carolina, thanks for holding her on the air. Then Chris.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe you could get Joe Biggs to ask the commie agitators there whether or not they foresee or hope for a Bolshevik-style revolution in America. And, I remember seeing the movie Red Dawn when I was a teenager. I think it came out in 84, perhaps 85. And, I didn't really... I was very unsophisticated back then in my thinking, but, the only way you could really get away with something like that, an invading force, is to actually have traitors. We would have to have traitors within our own government and throughout our own society in order for them to really be able to get away with that, I think. And, of course, I've learned over the years that we actually do have all those people in place.
Oh, we've got the local communists, trying to say where I live and stuff. They're so stupid. They're saying other Alex Joneses and about how, I'm going to, have the red terror and all this. And so here's how this works. All this stuff kicks off. We all know who the enemy is. It just comes down to that, and we know they're coming for us.
Yeah, and I think they'll use the American forces under the American flag so far as they can get away with that and get the American forces to go along. They can supplement those with the blue helmets, the United Nations forces under the blue flag, and then I don't know. It sounds kind of far-fetched, but I could see them maybe possibly bringing millions of Chinese, hundreds of millions of Chinese troops in.
Anything flies now. The government gets away with everything. You'd be racist if you weren't for Chinese communist troops in your house. I never used to believe that, but I mean, so many folks told me that was the plan. Who'd been on the inside, I would just roll my eyes, and now you just see it all unfolding. And the communists are lining up. They're getting fired up. They're getting ready. They believe this summer is their time, and it's all White House directed. Thank you, Mad Max. Yes, I in my life have been very bold in the fight for freedom. At least bold compared to others. I don't think I've been bold enough, quite frankly. And I've had a lot of success because I was bold. It separated me from the rest of the herd. Plus, we're fighting bold activities by the globalist. Only bold actions are going to really have an effect and break through. Well, the New World Order knows that fortune favors the bold. They are just warp speed right now, pulling out all the stops, doing stuff that's over the top, stuff that I just can't believe. And I really think Joel Skousen's right. They want to get us into a nuclear war, have that selectively take out the major military centers, roll out the secret weapons, defeat the Russians and the Chinese, maybe keep the Chinese halfway alive militarily, and then create a new bipolar world, not a tripolar world, and then finally create a unipolar world government based on the ashes of that. But the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. I'm going to get Rodney Stitch on for a full-hour special report very soon on the Nightly News. He's with us till about 40 after. Then I'll go to Chris and Richie and Malik and many others that are patiently holding on the nuclear war news that the Pentagon is talking about and the Chinese government's threatening and just all the craziness that's happening. But Rodney Stitch is a very interesting person. I'll tell you about him in just a moment. Before we go any further, I want to read these quotes again just because I think they illustrate everything we're facing. The first quote comes from Cicero, Marcus Tullius Cicero. This is before the birth of Christ in the time of Julius Caesar. I guess about 55, 60 years before the time of Christ. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleyways, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears the face and arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep within the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city, George Soros. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear. And as we convert into a corrupt society, we have economies based on baloney, so productivity falls. And then the answer is more government, more regulation, more taxes. And so the producers become less and less. And so the society sinks. Barry Goldwater quote, on the Trilateral Commission, Senator Barry Goldwater, presidential Republican nominee in 19, well, they killed Kennedy in 63 and had an election after that. Well, when did he run for president? Was it in 64 or 68? You have to look it up. The Trilateral Commission is intended to be the vehicle for multinational consolidation of the commercial and banking interest by seizing control of the political government of the United States. The Trilateral Commission represents a skillful, coordinated effort to seize control and consolidate the four centers of power: political, monetary, intellectual, and ecclesiastical. What the Trilateral Commission intends to create is a worldwide economic power superior to the political governments of the nation states involved. As managers and creditors of the system, they will rule the future. Barry Goldwater in his 1964 book, With No Apologies. And that was a decade exactly. I guess he ran against LBJ right after Kennedy got killed and LBJ took over. He wrote that a decade before the Trilateral Commission was founded, the year I was born, 1974. Because he'd been in the Senate meetings when they were pushing all this through the Council on Foreign Relations. What is trilateral? The trifecta, unos, dos, tres, tri, three, tricycle, tri, North American Union, Asian Union, European Union, all started by trade deals, all secret. The EU deals were secret. Why do we put up with this? This didn't happen until just a decade ago or so in the U.S., but in Europe they were able to do it. England is in the EU and can't get out and never had a vote. People go, well, don't worry, the U.S. created the UN and runs all this. Not the U.S., the robber barons. It officially was founded in July 73, but didn't really get funded and didn't have a building until 74, so technically the year before I was born. A pointless factoid, but just correcting myself. Now, joining us till about 40 after, just to look into one area of